really are only as good as your last movie, regardless, business is business, and that's how it is. I just try not to take it personally. I never wrote seriously, conscientiously, until I began to write screenplays. I used to just make these lists of the pictures, and then at a certain point, people started saying things in these films, and I thought, well, maybe I should write down what they say and then describe things. And I got quite involved with it because I was also learning to edit films at the time, and editing and writing to me are the things that frame the directing. I think if there's some poetic precision to the way I write, it comes from editing, and then my directing benefited from both.
I know what you need.
Excuse me?
You need a woman.
Oh?
That girl is crazy.
I know, but I like her.
Yeah, but she's leaving town.
So I've heard.
So come on, what do you say? I know what you need.
Excuse me?
You need a woman.
Oh?
That girl's crazy.
I know, but I like her.
But she's leaving town.
So I've heard.
So come on, what do you say? I know what you need.
Excuse me?
You need a woman.
Oh?
That girl's crazy.
I know, but I like her.
But she's leaving town.
So I've heard.
So come on, what do you say? I know what you need.
I come from a blue-collar world and appreciated a lot of it, while at the same time feeling I had to get out of there, because little by little you discover who you are and what your desires are.
Harvard?
It's a college.
It's expensive.
You can't put a price tag on a thing like that, Vic.
You can put a price tag on anything, Liz. Didn't you apply anywhere else?
No.
I'm gonna be paying for this the rest of my life.
Victor, aren't you proud of her?
Not going anyway. Well, I'll be lucky for a lot in September.
Shut up, you. Of course you're going to college.
I try to break things down to try to distill situations and characters, gestures down to something really concrete. So blue-collar people deal with things. I mean, I'm sure white-collar people deal with things too, but there's something about the imagery of a carpenter who takes two inanimate objects and nails them together and makes another thing. It's, first of all, it's very much like filmmaking. Well, I don't think that the first one set any sort of standard way of working that I followed, because the next film had considerably more money, and although it was still low budget, I guess I'd have to say that, having a low-budget mindset from well before I made my first feature film, it's a good creative discipline. I think that's what I might have meant by that it sets certain challenges. It is good. I mean, it's exciting for me to think that I have to make something with nothing or with limited means. I don't think that's a kind of creative approach that one needs to apologize for. Even more so as I get a little bit older and have more experience and meet more people who have small companies, and now I understand the problems and the joys of running a small company, probably more so than I did when I started making movies, because I have a small company myself and I have to run it. But yeah, I appreciate having conversations with people who have maybe a small design firm, or maybe people who build radios or something. It's usually much more fun than talking to other filmmakers or theorists.
Does this belong to you? Pearl, what do you say?
Marry me.
No.
It was our first feature film back then, and to do even a small insert shot of a hand holding a pen, 10 years ago we might have done it in a certain way, and we might have been terribly inspired and attentive and hardworking, but there's no accounting for how much you gained in 10 years. I identify pretty strongly with all of the characters. I couldn't really write them, the male and female characters.
Right.
I
If you
mean, I
didn't,
couldn't really understand them if on some level, like I say, mystery, leads to attraction, but you can't really get anywhere in shaping a character unless you make certain assumptions. So based on your understanding of being a human being, you start to formulate possibilities for these people. I think I'm just ultimately more interested in women. It has a lot to do with, I think, anybody who makes something, you want to make something that you want to see. I think the characters that I made, in the beginning, like characters that Adrian played, I imagined this woman into existence, just the kind of woman I would fall in love with. I guess this particular ambivalence I was talking about, this not feeling entirely at home telling a story without some reflection on the telling of the story. And, well, certainly I have what I consider a healthy disregard for the conventions of naturalistic storytelling. I don't really want you to lose yourself in the movie, in the story. But I have a very high regard for storytelling and fiction, and realize that part of this fictive dream is essential. I mean, if I keep talking about it, I'll sound psychotic, and I guess it is. It's a kind of psychosis here. You want to do two totally, radically different things, and the way that you happen to rope and tape them together somehow constitutes your style. Yeah, I mean, if I have a stylist, a style, or if there's a Hartley stylistic or something, it can't be anything but the result of how I deal with what I feel are my failures. Being a producer is this balancing act constantly of doing exactly what you want to do, but being realistic enough to know that you're going to have to make some compromise. And I guess if there's an art to producing, that's exactly what it is. So, I compromise every single time. I adjust my expectations of the work and the way I want to work, usually. I would like to work very slowly and without a set schedule. Well, that's impossible. Never happens. So I say, okay, I'll work that way and I'll make this film in a real tight schedule, and I'll make it with less money.
I don't trust anybody.
Well, I try to avoid happy and sad endings and reach for true and false endings.
Do you hear that?
No, what is it?
Listen.
I think my endings strive to be true and not forced, because I think happiness is a complicated thing. These are not bad endings in a way. They're not, things have worked out the way they probably should work out. And there's possibility, which is very important. I want the film to end with a gesture of possibility rather than complete closure. Think very musically about the pictures, and again, the set editing thing, which I think musically all the time, and do make music all the time. Again, it's usually been quite simple. It gets more elaborate, more sophisticated as time goes on. I took a music sight reading notation class last semester at night at the night school near me, and benefited enormously from it because 20 years of making music, but the only limitations I had were my confidence in going where I didn't know where I was going, and 12 weeks of careful analysis of harmony, chord structure, and stuff like that gave me this confidence. We go way back. The first time he shot anybody's film, he shot mine. We were at school together, so our first semester, third year. Most of us were getting to a point where we all had to learn everything. We had to learn how to edit and shoot and record sound and stuff and write and direct. But by the beginning of our third year, we began to specialize, I guess, and I knew that I wanted to spend more time with the actors, and Michael was clearly becoming a cameraman, and so we had our first experience together like that, and I think we were drawn to each other for certain things we saw in each other's work. So yeah, it's a push and pull. I mean, it's a nice dynamic. You know, Michael will often, you know, say something like, "Are you sure you want to do that?" Because I benefit a lot from Mike's experience too, because I don't work with anyone else. Mike shoots for many, many people, and he'll often come back from working with someone else with something he's learned. So it changes all the time. Filmmaker is easier because of a body of work that I can go back to, and you know, I think Godard. Vendors, very much. Preston Sturgis and Howard Hawks, those guys, their movies and their scripts really, I drew a lot from. Yeah, well, I mean, I think every filmmaker is really important. These are sources that I go back to again and again, find inspiration and encouragement in again and again. So, I mean, in that sense, yeah, I keep going back to them. They're not always the films I wanted to watch every day. Yeah, I like variety just as much as anybody else. But it is true that there are certain works and certain men and women who you find yourself being drawn to again, even their new work, to see what they're going to do and where they're going to go. I wouldn't want to be associated necessarily with a clique for the wrong reasons. I think if a person's experience and output encourages somebody else to do good work, or attempt to do good work even, that's great, and I'm happy to be used as an example. But it's hard to, I'd be careful to isolate or indicate a clique that I think I'm representative of, or anyone else for that matter. When I started making films, everybody would say like, "Oh, in the mold of a Jim Jarmusch."
Yeah, it must get
like
very
that.
annoying.
And yeah, well, it wasn't that annoying to me. I mean, being mentioned in the same breath as Jim Jarmusch was kind of swell, I guess. But yeah, I always thought, God, he must be so embarrassed to have to now tug not only the weight of his own reputation and work, but of other people as well. And when I finally got to meet him many years later, we had a very funny conversation about that.
Emmett, you're not even listening to me.
I am so, and to tell you quite frankly, Audrey, I'm worried.
About what?
About you.
Why?
Well, because lately you seem so, apathetic.
Oh, Emmett, you're a dick.
Oh, come on.
Well, I think I try to give evidence that I recognize it as part of our shared human experience. I guess the way to say it is that I deal with politics in human terms rather than dealing with humans in political terms.
Looking back in hindsight, which of your films has given you the most pleasure and which has come closest to achieving what you set out to achieve?
Probably Flirt, but besides, up until Flirt, I thought it was Theory of Achievement.
Right.
Or Ambition, one of those.
Yeah.
That's the right balance, because they were shorter films, the right balance between the pleasures of the plastics of the medium and the pleasures of telling a story.
I'd probably pick Surviving Desire. I think that's probably my favourite of your.
That's my least favourite of my films.
I'd probably pick Ambition or Theory of Achievement.
That's okay.